We are now recording.
Good evening, everyone. I am calling this meeting of the Lebanon Planning Board to order on Monday, April 27th at 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Remotely via Microsoft Teams application. First order of business, I need to take a roll call. So as last time, when I asked your name, just say present and tell us whether you're alone or someone is in the room with you. So I am alone to start with B. Gregorio?
Present.
And alone or with someone?
Alone.
Thank you. Jim?
Present and alone.
Joan?
Present and alone.
Laurel?
Present and alone.
Kathy?
Present and alone.
Matt Cole? Matt Cole?
Bruce, this is Matt Hall. Matt told me it's very likely he will not be here tonight.
All right, thank you. Then on to Matt Hall.
Matt Hall is present and alone.
And Sarah.
I'm present and with Rob.
Okay.
Oh, there you are, Sarah.
Yeah, can you
just popped
can you
up.
see my face? Okay.
Yep. All right.
Matt Hall just came on the screen though.
All right. So
Worth Karen Leo Hill is also present as the alternate, although I know I'm not needed tonight, but I'm present and alone.
all right, but Karen, you're part of the public tonight.
No, no.
Thank you.
So firstly, we have two members absent, one seat that is vacant. So Gregorio, I will appoint you to replace one of the absent members. And also last time we mentioned your name, but we really didn't give anybody a chance to meet you. So would you take a very short minute or two to introduce yourself to the board members?
Sure, yes. My name is Gregorio Amaro. I am a father of 16-year-old twins. My wife and I have been in Lebanon for 18 years. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, in Los Angeles, where I studied graphic design packaging at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California. In 2000, we relocated, my wife and I relocated to the Upper Valley from Caracas, Venezuela. Prior to that, I led design teams in Dallas, Boston, Santa Fe, and Austin. I earned my Master of Arts Liberal Studies degree from Dartmouth College. And I'm currently the creative director for Dartmouth's Office of Advancement Communication. I've served on the City of Lebanon Signage Task Force and the City of Austin's Austin Arts Commission. I like to organize food drives with my family for Listen Community Services. And in my spare time, I like to mountain bike, fly fish, and go for hikes on long trails with my family and dog.
Thank you very much. The one thing I know is Gregorio prefers that we call him by Gregorio, not by Greg.
That's right.
So thank you for that. Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Tim Corwin with the Lebanon Planning Department. David Brooks, the planning director, is also on the team chat, Teams meeting. Just wanted to make a few opening remarks. Due to the coronavirus pandemic and pursuant to Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, issued on March 23rd, 2020, in accordance with Executive Order 2020-04, the Lebanon Planning Board is authorized to meet electronically without a quorum physically present in the same location. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with Emergency Order Number 12, the City of Lebanon has taken action to provide public access to the meeting by telephone with potential additional access by video, to provide public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, and to provide a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. For this meeting, Microsoft Teams is being used as the communication platform. All members of the planning board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and to participate in the meeting by visiting lebanonnh.gov/live, clicking on the link for the April 27th, 2020 planning board meeting. Instructions on how to attend are provided on the webpage. To assist in the preparation of the meeting minutes and to ensure all participants are aware of who is participating, we ask that all speakers identify themselves before speaking and to spell their first and last names before beginning to speak. We also ask that planning board members identify themselves before speaking. Always please identify yourself. Don't assume that anyone else is going to recognize your voice. In order to ensure the best possible transmission of the meeting content, it is suggested that you disable the camera on your chosen device to reduce the video feed and increase the available bandwidth for all attendees. To improve sound quality and reduce the amount of feedback in the system, microphones will be muted by staff until you have a question or comment. For people using the Microsoft Teams platform, you can unmute yourself by clicking the button on the screen. For people calling in by phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself. If anyone has a problem with access during the course of the meeting, please email us at planning@lebanonnh.gov. David Brooks will be monitoring that email address. However, there's really only so much that we can do about access issues, but at a minimum, it would be good to document those. If there's anything that we can do to help you, we'll try to do so. In the event that there are technical difficulties in general with the meeting and somehow we're unable to continue, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Tonight, the planning board will be concluding 4 public hearings and making a determination with respect to those hearings. Another public hearing, the other item on the agenda, 401 Mount Support Road, that is a hearing that was continued or opened at the April 13th meeting, continued tonight, and it will be continued again, partly because we want to make sure that anyone who would like to participate from the public is able to do so, and we can't know beforehand whether or not that person will have difficulty with accessing the Microsoft Teams platform for some reason. And so that application probably would have been continued anyway, just because it's a larger application. But the board will certainly continue it in order to give any member of the public an extra opportunity to participate if they were unable to do so tonight. Any additional questions or information needed on that, please call the Planning and Development Department at 603-448-1457. You can also email us at planning@lebanonnh.gov. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting will be done by roll call vote. And we ask that you not use the chat function. Both participants and board members, please do not use the chat function unless you need to communicate that you're experiencing technical difficulties, which again, there's only so much that we'll be able to do about that. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and it will be available on the city's website at lebanonnh.gov/agenda center. And I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Tim. So here's the plan for this evening. We have 4 applications that we discussed at the last meeting. We did not take a decision on any of the 4 because we wanted to give the public sufficient time to be able to review documents and generally know about these applications. So tonight we will be making decisions on those 4. What I propose is that we go through them as quickly as possible. We'll then go to committee reports, and I'm only going to ask for people that have something to share with other members. Hopefully we go through that very quickly. Other business very quickly, and 2 sets of meetings to approve. Having got that out of the way, then we'll go back to the 401 application and have the rest of the meeting, if needed, in order to review, discuss that application. So the first application on the list, 2A, is Bettis Family Revocable Trust. Tim, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board did continue this hearing to tonight to accommodate any additional public input. We did not receive any at any point between the last meeting and tonight. And so the staff would recommend going ahead and closing the public hearing and then entering into deliberation.
Is there anyone from the public on this call? No, then I will close the public hearing and we'll go into deliberation. Does anyone have any comments on this application? I don't hear any comments. I know that there are 2 waiver requests. Should we go over those, Tim?
Sure. And let me just clarify, the requests are for waivers from delineating wetlands and from requiring soil tests in compliance with the requirements of section 13.4 of the subdivision regulations. Staff would supports the granting of the waiver request, except that with respect to waiving the wetland delineation, I think the request is that, and this is what staff would support, is that happen at a later time prior to the recording of the plat, not that it be waived altogether. But we are it's a matter of delay, and that's why staff's proposed condition still requires that wetland delineation to happen at some point. But we do support the section 95C2 waiver request in full.
So walk me through that in a little more detail. I'm not clear as to.
Sure. When any subdivision plan is submitted for approval by the planning board, one of the key pieces of information is to understand where the wetlands are on any particular property. And the regulations require that wetland delineation be done by a certified wetland scientist. In this case, the application was submitted at a time of year where it is difficult to undertake that wetland delineation. So, in some senses, you could look at the regulations as there being sort of a season for subdivisions, but we don't limit the time frame within which someone can submit a subdivision application. But the fact remains that at this time of year, or when the application was submitted, it was difficult to delineate those wetlands on the ground during the winter. And so instead, because there's no evidence that the wetlands are substantial on the property or would significantly impact the plat as is, staff is supportive of doing that wetland delineation after the approval, but prior to the recording of the plat, to make sure that it gets done. And if something comes up where additional approvals are required, then we can certainly address that at that time.
So,
Chair?
yeah.
I have a question too, Bruce. Kathy.
So I think I heard Matt Hall first and then Kathy.
Thank you, Bruce. Tim, just as a clarification, for the second waiver request, the one that's 95C2, the soil test ones, are you saying staff is you said staff is completely in agreement that waiver is perfectly fine?
Yes, because those requirements will be essentially met by the submission of the NHDES.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Kathy Romano.
I'm not sure if this is the same question or not. Tim, do I hear you say we should turn down the waiver about the wetlands request now but approve the second one as a staff recommendation?
No, the first request the first waiver request is a partial waiver request. The wetland delineation under the regulations has to be done at the time that the subdivision application is submitted to the planning board for approval. That hasn't been done yet, but we think that it should be done at least prior to the recording of the plat.
So why would we not vote it down then if it hasn't been done? I don't understand.
It's up to the board. If you feel that that it's not appropriate to grant a waiver from that request, you can deny the application.
Right. It's a timing question, Kathy. So if we approve the waiver, then the application moves ahead. but a condition will be to, in effect, meet those requirements. So it's just a timing.
So there'll be a condition.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other comments? All right, Matt, would
Yes.
you please proceed with a motion for the waivers?
Yes. Thank you,
Unfortunately,
Chair.
I can't see members, so I'm guessing that we will treat both waivers simultaneously.
Yeah, that's the motion I'll make.
Okay.
I move that the Lebanon Planning Board approve waivers for the application of Bettis Family Revocable Trust for a minor subdivision, number PB 2020-10-MIN, from the following sections of subdivision regulations. Section 9.5A7, requiring wetlands to be delineated by a certified wetland scientist whose seal and signature shall appear on the plat. Section 9.5C2, requiring soil tests in compliance with the requirements of Section 13.4.
Mr. Chair, before you take a second on that, this is Tim. Matt, maybe to clarify, maybe at the end of the first waiver, Section 95A7, maybe append at the time of submission to that, to clarify that it's not, to help it read better with the proposed condition. So it would read Section 95A7, requiring wetlands to be delineated by a certified wetland scientist whose seal and signature shall appear on the plat at the time of plan submission.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to amend it accordingly.
Fine. Do I have a second for this motion?
Chair, Joan Monroe here.
Yes.
Were we going to do them both at once? And
Yes.
now we're going to do them separately?
No, we're going to do them both at once. That was just an amendment to one of the two.
Okay, so this motion is to allow the waiving of 9.5.A.7 and 9.5.C.2 with the addition of those the suggested wording at the end of the wetlands one, correct?
Correct.
Did we have a second for it?
No.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Joan. Any discussion? So I will do a roll call. I am voting in favor. Gregorio?
Gregorio votes in favor.
Jim?
Counselor Jim Winnie votes in favor.
Joan?
Joan votes in for waiver.
I take that as a yes.
I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you. Laurel? Laurel?
Favor?
In favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Kathy?
Kathy votes yes.
Matt Hall?
Matt is in favor.
And Sarah?
Sarah's in favor.
So I have unanimous. All right, let's move on to the motion to approve or deny.
And Mr. Chair. Matt's
Mr.
here.
Hall?
Yes, thank you. I move that the Lebanon Planning Board approve the application of Bettis Family Revocable Trust for a 2-lot minor subdivision of 407 Dartmouth College Highway, tax map 112, lot 1, number PB 2020-10-MIN, as shown on a plat titled Subdivision Survey, Land of Bettis Family Revocable Trust, 407 Dartmouth College Highway, prepared by Holt Gilmore Survey Associates, LLC, dated February 27, 2020, including any and all submissions and testimony provided for and during the public hearing with the following conditions. Conditions to be satisfied prior to the signing and recording of the plat. 1. The wetlands on the property shall be delineated by a certified wetlands scientist. 2. The applicant shall provide a revised plat depicting the following changes to the satisfaction of the Planning and Development Department. A. Depict the wetlands on the property as delineated by a certified wetland scientist whose seal and signature shall appear on the plan. Section 9.5A7. B. Provide the license number and seal of the surveyor. Section 9.5A3. C. Identify plat revision dates. Section 9.5A1. D. Depict the names and mailing addresses of the holders of any easements or other restrictions. Section 9.5A2. E. Identify a shared access easement over the proposed shared driveway and add a note indicating that such shared access easement shall be recorded at the time of transfer of ownership of either parcel. 3. The applicant shall provide a digital record drawing, CAD, DWG format using New Hampshire State Plane Coordinate System or an alternate approved by the city's GIS coordinator. 4. If required by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, a driveway permit shall be obtained from the New Hampshire DOT, and a copy of such approval shall be provided to the Planning and Development Department. Section 9.5C3. 5. The applicant shall provide verification that the septic design for Parcel B complies with all applicable regulations of the Lebanon zoning ordinance, including without limitation, Section 401, Wetlands Conservation District, and Section 410, Riverbank Protection District, to the satisfaction of the Planning and Development Department. General condition. 6. Future development on the new lot shall be subject to City of Lebanon impact fees pursuant to Section 213 of the zoning ordinance. The impact fee shall be calculated at the time of building permit issuance based on the impact fee schedule adopted on August 13th, 2018, and such fees shall be due and payable at the time of issuance of a certificate of occupancy. In accordance with RSA 674-39, the approved site plan shall be exempt from any future changes in impact fees and methodology for 5 years from the date of approval. However, any building permits which are issued after the end of that 5-year period shall be fully subject to whatever impact fees and methodology are in effect at the time of building permit issuance. The end.
Thank you, Matt. Do I have a second for this motion?
Kathy seconds.
Thank you, Kathy. Is there any discussion?
I have a question, Chair.
Yes, please.
This is Joan. I was just wondering what the difference is between number 1 and number 2A. They say almost the same thing.
The only difference is that the first one says the wetlands actually have to be delineated, and then the second one says that the delineation has to be then put on the plat. You could have flags in a field, but then you have to transfer that data to the actual plat itself.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other discussion? All right, I will take a roll call. I am in favor. Gregorio,
I am in favor.
Jim,
Counselor Jim Winnie's in favor.
Joan,
Joan is in favor.
Laurel,
Laurel is in favor.
Kathy,
Kathy votes yes.
Matt Hall,
Matt is in favor.
and Sarah.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you all. I see that as unanimous. And we have one further motion.
Oh,
Matt?
It's on. Yes, thank you. I move that the Lebanon Planning Board authorizes the chair to sign the plat for Bettis Family Revocable Trust for a 2-lot minor subdivision of 407 Dartmouth College Highway, tax map 112, lot 1, number PB 2020-10-MIN, as shown on a plat titled Subdivision Survey, Land of Bettis Family Revocable Trust, 407 Dartmouth College Highway, prepared by Holt Gilmore Survey Associates, LLC, dated February 27th, 2020, as shown on a plat titled
Matt, sorry about that. Just delete until as such plan. February 27th, 2020, as such plan.
as
Maybe
such
amended.
plan. Okay.
Joan seconds.
Oh, sorry. As such plan may be amended in accordance with the board's approval dated April 27th, 2020.
Thank you, Matt. A second?
Joan seconds.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor, I vote in favor. Gregorio,
Gregorio votes in favor.
Jim,
Counselor Jim Winnie votes in favor.
Joan,
Joan votes yes.
Laurel,
Laurel votes yes.
Kathy,
Kathy votes yes.
Matt Hall,
Matt votes yes.
and Sarah.
Sarah votes yes.
Thank you all. That's unanimous. All right. Moving to our next applicant, Addie Mab and the Hitchcock Clinic. Tim, can I pass this back to you?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, Matt Hall here. I will be recusing myself for this application.
Thank you for that reminder. Thank you. Tim?
Mr. Chair, this is Tim. Like the other previous application, staff has received no additional comment on this application since the last meeting.
Do we have anybody from the public who would like to comment on this application? I take that as a no, and I'm
This is
going
Kevin Warden.
I'm sorry?
This is Kevin Warden, civil engineer on behalf of the applicant for Engineering Ventures. I have no comments, but I'm available for questions.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm not hearing anyone from the public wishing to comment on the proposal. So I'm going to ask, if there's no further discussion among the board members, I will ask Joan to read the motion to approve.
And Mr. Chair, you can close the hearing. This is Tim.
I did, and then, yes, I will close the public hearing. Thank you, Tim. Joan, would you please read the motion?
Sure. If I've got the right one, motion to approve the application. I move that the Lebanon Planning Board approve the application of Adamab LLC and the Hitchcock Clinic for a boundary line adjustment of lands located at 7 Lucent Drive, Tax Map 10, Lot 11, Plot 2600, and 0 New Hampshire Route 120, Tax Map 10, Lot 10. Planning Board number 2020-12-BLA, as shown on a plat titled Adamab LLC and the Hitchcock Clinic, prepared by Fuss and O'Neill, dated October 25, 2019, last revised March 24, 2020. Project number 2019-1028.A20, including any and all submissions and testimony provided for and during the public hearing, with the following conditions. 1. Prior to the signing and recording of the final plat, the applicant shall provide to the city a draft copy of the deed of the land transfer for review to ensure the transfer will be completed properly for assessing and recording purposes. 2. Prior to the signing and recording of the final plat, the applicant shall provide a digital record drawing, CAD-DOG format, using New Hampshire State Plane Coordinate System.
Thank you, Joan. May I have a second, please?
Laurel seconds.
Thank you, Laurel. Any discussion? All right, I'm going to take a roll call. So I am in favor. Gregorio?
Gregorio is in favor.
Jim?
Counselor Jim Winnie is in favor.
Joan?
Joan is in favor, votes yes.
Laurel?
Laurel's in favor.
Kathy?
Kathy votes yes.
Matt is recused. And Sarah?
Yes, Sarah votes yes.
So that is unanimous with one person recused. Can we have a second motion, please, Joan?
Authorization for plat signing. Joan Monroe moved that the Lebanon Planning Board authorizes the chair to sign the plat for Adamab LLC and the Hitchcock Clinic, number PB 2020-20-BLA, as shown on a plat titled Adamab LLC and the Hitchcock Clinic, prepared by Fuss and O'Neill, dated October 25, 2019, last revised March 24, 2020, project number 20191028.A20.
Thank you, Joan. May I have a second?
Sarah
Kathy seconds.
seconds.
So I think I heard Sarah.
Correct.
All right, so Sarah seconds. Thank you, ladies. So I'll do another roll call. I am in favor. Gregorio,
Gregorio's in favor.
Jim,
Counselor Jim Winnie's in favor.
Joan,
Joan is in favor.
Laurel,
Laurel is in favor.
Kathy,
Kathy votes yes.
and Sarah.
Sarah votes yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That is 2 down. And we now move to the City of Lebanon, 370 Plainfield Road.
Hi, Chairperson. This is Mark Morgan, the Solid Waste Manager.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Just give us a second. So
Sure.
I believe where we are is I will be asking board members if they have any comments on the project, but since it's a government project, we don't need to vote on it. We do need to vote on the, I always forget what it is, CUP.
Conditional use permit.
The conditional use permit, thank you. So Tim, may I turn it over to you to give us an update as to further information received in regard to the conditional use permit?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant did submit a letter on to Boys and King letterhead, responding to a question of the that was submitted or that was asked by one of the planning board members at the April 13th hearing. We have not received any other comment, public or otherwise, regarding this application, and so unless the board has further further questions about the application in general or with respect to the additional material that was submitted, staff would recommend closing the hearing and entering into deliberation.
Thank you. So, Tim, should I solicit comments from the board, if any, on the project and then address the conditional use permit?
Yeah, I think that would be a good way to approach this. Yeah, yes.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We do have Chris Rivet and Michael Hildebrand from Du Bois and King on the team's meeting this evening to answer questions.
All right. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. So first of all, I'll ask if there's anyone from the public that is on that would like to express opinion or a comment. Right, I don't hear anyone. So I will then turn to board members. Do board members have any comment in regard to the project? We're not voting on the project, but if anyone has comments on the project that we would like communicated to the city, this would be time to make those known.
Chair, this is
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes, Kathy.
Yeah, I'm the one that asked the question at the last meeting with regard to whether any toxic materials would be disposed of at the Lebanon dump site. And the letter that we received back said no. So the question that I had then just is what happens to those, I forget the name of them, those toxic materials, then how do they get disposed of? That's one question. And the second one is, I'm not entirely sure, maybe you can clarify for me what we're voting on, because I happened to drive to the dump this week and it looks like this facility is already built. So I'm just confused.
Well, Mark, could you
Yep.
take each of those in turn? So where will be, have you determined where those materials will be disposed?
So the process, a lot of the materials will actually just be burned up in the process of generating electricity. The question that has arisen is the handling of the spent media that's used to clean up the gas prior to it being utilized in the turbines that we're using to generate electricity. That material may require hazardous waste disposal, and there are disposal facilities throughout the Northeast that it could find its home in. It's not yet known what the media will look like at the end of use, because our landfill is unique because it's Lebanon's. Every landfill is unique. But as I stated and was stated in the letter, the Lebanon landfill is not allowed to accept hazardous materials for disposal in the landfill. So if the material is deemed hazardous, then it can't be disposed of at the Lebanon landfill. If it is, it'll find a new home. There's a landfill in New York and a landfill in Rochester, New Hampshire that might be the disposal sites for that. Does that answer your question?
Hang on a second, Mark. So Kathy, does that answer your question?
Well, yes, for that part, of course, I guess my concern is if there are toxic materials, how do we protect our employees? I mean, will they know how to recognize them and handle them?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we're working with vendors on the proper handling of all media used to clean up the gas. So staff will be trained appropriately and protected from any hazards or toxins.
Okay, and then just the question of, it seems to already be built.
Sure. So the facility that you see that's there currently is a flare. So all we're doing with that is literally burning the gas that the landfill is generating. As waste decomposes, it produces a gas, and that's what we smell when we smell rotting trash. So as an odor control mechanism, the city installed a flare to manage odors. What this project is to take that gas, and instead of just burning it, we're going to run it through a number of engines, and those engines will produce electricity. So it's doing something beneficial with the gas instead of just burning it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do we have anyone having a public or having a comment that they wish recorded in our minutes directed to the city in regard to the project in general? I take that as a no. So now we'll move to the conditional use permit. Tim, can you just give staff point of view, just to remind us?
Excuse me, sure. The board is authorized to grant conditional use permits through the zoning ordinance. And so when you make determinations on these applications, it's a little bit different from what you typically do with a subdivision or a site plan application. In the case of a conditional use permit, or in the case of a special exception before the zoning board or a variance before the zoning board, the board any board should make some findings of fact and some conclusions of law in order to support the decision that they make. In this case, the conditional use permit is allowed pursuant to section 12.3 of the zoning ordinance. There are a few criteria that the applicant meets. Staff feels that the project meets those criteria, and we prepared a draft motion that reflects that determination.
All right, I think, seeing that not everyone has that in front of them, I will ask Matt to read this motion. We'll have a second, and then if there's discussion, we can have discussion at that point. So if I haven't already, I will close the public hearing. And Matt, if you would be so kind as to read this motion.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the Lebanon Planning Board approve the application of the City of Lebanon for a conditional use permit per section 612.3 of the zoning ordinance to install a biogas energy system together with associated site improvements at 370 Plainfield Road, tax map 157 lot 3, zoned industrial H, number PB 2020-13-CUP. In support thereof, the Planning Board makes the following findings of fact based on testimony given during the public hearing held on April 13th, 2020 and April 27th, 2020, application materials presented, and the supporting documents submitted. 1. The subject property is owned by the City of Lebanon and is utilized as a solid waste management facility, including a landfill and recycling center. 2. The city requests a conditional use permit pursuant to Section 612.3 of the zoning ordinance to allow a biogas energy system to be constructed on site. The proposed renewable energy system will allow the methane gas produced by the landfill to be converted to energy. 3. A biogas energy system is a type of renewable energy system that is allowed in the Industrial H District by conditional use permit pursuant to Section 612.3A and Table 612.3 of the zoning ordinance. 4. The planning board may grant a conditional use permit for a renewable energy system pursuant to the criteria set forth in Section 612.3C of the zoning ordinance and the general criteria set forth in Section 612.3B. 5. The City of Lebanon is subject to the requirements of the zoning ordinance pursuant to Section 214 of the zoning ordinance, and therefore a conditional use permit for the use is required. As a result of the above findings of fact and based on testimony given, application materials presented, and supporting documents submitted, the Planning Board concludes that the proposal satisfactorily demonstrates compliance with the applicable review criteria set forth in Section 612.3C of the zoning ordinance and the general criteria set forth in Section 612.3B. The Planning Board approves the requested conditional use permit with the following condition. 1. The applicant shall obtain a building permit and shall comply with all applicable local, state, and federal regulations in the construction and use of the proposed facility. The end.
Thank you, Matt. Do I have a second?
Counselor Winnie will second.
Thank you, Jim. I open it up to discussion. Does anyone have any comments on this motion? All right, I don't hear any comments, so I'm going to move to the vote on it. I am voting in favor. Gregorio?
Gregorio is in favor.
Jim?
Counselor Jim Winnie votes in favor.
Joan?
Joan votes in favor.
Laurel?
Laurel votes in favor.
Kathy?
Kathy votes yes.
Matt Hall?
Matt votes yes.
And Sarah?
Sarah votes yes.
So I have a unanimous vote. Thank you. Thanks to the applicant. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, we now move to our fourth application, which is the Agua Street or 21 Water Street. And my recollection, and Tim, I'll ask you to elaborate, but my recollection is that we had a robust debate last time, and my sense was that everyone was in agreement that the application meets the requirements of Lebanon downtown, and therefore there was a waiver that at a previous meeting we had voted down. I question whether that waiver is even needed. Then I'll put it over to you.
Yep, this is Tim. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my recollection as well. The outstanding issue at the last meeting was the project's compliance with Section 6.10 of the site plan regulations, which are the Lebanon downtown review design criteria. The applicant presented some additional testimony, and I don't recall hearing any additional questions or concerns from the board, and so I came to the same conclusion that you did, that the board is satisfied with the project's compliance with 6.10. That makes the waiver request moot. And like the other applications, we have received no additional comment on this one from the applicant or any member of the public. And so we would, unless there are any other questions from the board, recommend closing the public hearing and entering into deliberation.
Comments from staff members?
Chair?
All right.
Chair?
Yes.
I
Who's
had
it?
about This is Joan Monroe. I had asked about the planting plan, and I said at the last meeting that I was fine with the proposed plan as in our packet. And there, I believe, and I'm looking through my papers and I can't find it. There was a list saying something like 20 arborvitaes, but only something like 5 of them were shown, and I assume the rest were to be positioned as possible. My concern was the vegetation on the northern side of the parcel, and in looking at it from the street, it looks like it's got as much vegetation as it can take, and there is some good vegetation from the abutting parcel. So I'm good with the plans as was depicted in our on the landscaping plan, wherever it is.
All right, thank you, Joan.
Chair?
Other comments?
Yeah, this is Kathy.
Yes, Kathy.
At the last meeting, I had suggested a railing be required to prevent anyone from falling down over that retaining wall. Did that get added as a condition?
This is Tim. Yes, I did include something along those lines as a proposed condition of approval in the draft motion that I sent to the chair and vice chair.
All right, so Kathy, please be attentive as that is read out and make sure that it complies with your request. I know the applicant accepted it, thought it was a very good idea. Do we have anyone from the public here who wishes to speak on this?
Not from the public, but this is Tim from 21 Agua. I just want to say thank you for your consideration again. I'm here if you have any questions.
All right, thank you, Tim. All right, with that, I will close the public hearing. And Matt, I will ask you once again to read the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the Lebanon Planning Board approve the application of 21 Agua Street LLC for an amendment to an approved site plan number PB 2019-29-SPR for site plan review to convert an office space to 3 apartments within an existing building at 21 Water Street, tax map 91, lot 257, number PB 2020-08-SPR, as shown on a plan set titled 21 Water Street renovation, prepared by Studio Nexus, dated February 24th, 2020, project number 1913, including any and all submissions and testimony provided for and during the public hearing, with the following conditions. Conditions to be satisfied prior to application for a building permit. 1. The applicant shall schedule and hold a pre-building permit application meeting with the planning department, city building inspectors, city engineer / the Department of Public Works, and fire department in order to help streamline the building permit review process and to review applicable code requirements. 2. The applicant shall obtain approval from the city council or the city manager's office for any additional water and or sewer flows per chapter 181. Although is that different now? Or am I wrong?
It's a good point, Matt.
Hold on a second. I think that's still right.
Oh, okay.
No, this is David. That should be chapters 136 or 182 for water and sewer.
Okay, so any additional water and or sewer flows per chapter, what was it, David, again? 132?
136 or 182.
136 or 182. 3, the applicant shall address the comments set forth in the attached memo from Brian Vincent, PE, dated February 28th, 2020, to the satisfaction of the city engineer. 4, the applicant shall provide 2 revised plan sets depicting the following revisions to the satisfaction of the Planning and Development Department and the city engineer. A, any changes made pursuant to condition of approval number 3. B, amend the zoning table on sheet A01 to update CBD to LD to identify the Riverbank Protection District as the overlay district and to update the setbacks for existing and proposed. Conditions to be satisfied prior to the issuance of a building permit. 5. The creation of dwelling units shall be subject to City of Lebanon impact fees pursuant to Section 213 of the zoning ordinance. The impact fee shall be calculated at the time of building permit issuance based on the impact fee schedule adopted on August 13th, 2018. In accordance with RSA 674-39, the approved site plan shall be exempt from any future changes in impact fees and methodology for 5 years from the date of approval. However, any building permits which are issued after the end of that 5-year period shall be fully subject to whatever impact fees and methodology are in effect at the time of building permit issuance. 6. All water and sewer fees shall be paid. Conditions to be satisfied prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. 1. All engineering review fees shall be paid in full as required by Section 4.7E1 of the subdivision regulations. 2. The impact fee calculated pursuant to condition of approval number 5 shall be paid. 3. All improvements depicted on the plan shall be completed and shall be constructed as depicted on the plan to the satisfaction of the Planning and Development Department and the reviewing engineer.
Mr. Chair, this is Tim Corwin. I sent the wrong version of the motion. So let me just update. Let me just read the updates.
Please.
So if this is satisfactory, Matt, you can amend your motion accordingly. So condition number 4 in its totality should read as follows. The applicant shall provide 2 revised plan sets depicting the following revisions to the satisfaction of the Planning and Development Department and the city engineer. A, any changes made pursuant to condition of approval number 3. B, the sidewalk leading to the first floor, front entry stairs, dead ends at the top of the retaining wall and presents a fall hazard for anyone exiting the first floor and turning the wrong way. Therefore, please add a railing along the top of the retaining wall next to the double glass doors on the bottom level of the front entry. C, amend sheet AO A0-1 to update CBD to LD to note that the property is located within the Riverbank Protection District and to update the setbacks for existing and proposed buildings. D, insert the original plan date of February 24th, 2020 and add the revision date of March 20th, 2020 with a description of the revision. And then the conditions are the same for the remainder, but they're numbered sequentially 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Matt, do you accept those changes?
Very much so.
May I have a second for the amended motion?
Laurel seconds.
Thank you, Laurel. Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Chair, this is David Brooks.
Yes, David.
In the wording of new condition 4B, I believe, related to the railing at the top of the wall. Tim, would you mind reading that one more time?
Sure. The condition itself is please add a railing along the top of the retaining wall next to the double glass doors on the bottom level of the front entry.
Not to nitpick too much, but I would suggest that you replace the word please with the applicant shall.
Okay.
Good catch, David. Matt, do you accept that change?
Matt accepts it.
And Laurel?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All right, I will proceed to the vote. I am in favor. Gregorio?
Gregorio is in favor.
Jim?
Counselor Jim Winnie is in favor.
Joan?
Joan Monroe is in favor.
Laurel?
Laurel is in favor.
Kathy?
Kathy votes yes.
Matt Hall?
Matt votes yes.
And Sarah?
Sarah votes yes.
And I see that as unanimous. Thank you all, and thanks to the applicant.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Very much.
So now we're going to move on quickly to the administrative part of this, committee reports. And I just ask if anyone representing any of the committees has something to say. Otherwise, we're going to close this out. Does any member have something to report on a committee activity?
Bruce, this is Matt Hall.
Yes.
I simply want to report that the Planning Board Development Regulations Update Subcommittee met for its first meeting last Friday, and it was, I think, a successful first meeting. There'll be many more to follow as we look at our regulations and what needs to be changed. So I think the board as a whole can look forward to reports from us in the future.
I think it's very ambitious, but I'm glad it's off to a good start. Anyone else?
Chair?
All right, I'm moving on.
Chair?
Yes,
This
I'm
is
sorry.
Joan-
Yes, who's that? Kathy?
No, Joan Monroe.
Joan, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I attended the Lebanon Energy Advisory Committee last week, and I have to say that they have so many minor and major projects that they're working on that it's really awesome. And to a large degree, it's fueled by Councillor Cliff Below, who is using his 26 years of having been involved in city and state government. He's using his vast knowledge of how to get bills passed and who to talk to, and also his work on the PUC in New Hampshire. All working on all kinds of tasks, many too many to relate, but it has to do with getting all the details worked out about turning the city streetlights off, about getting the various kinds of solar panels installed, and proposing new ones. Some trackers are being looked at as a possibility up at the airport. They're considering what the energy would be used for that will be powered from the turning the flame into electricity. And also at the airport will be producing probably more energy than they themselves will need. So, and this is just a list of about, and that's just a couple of things. That's a list of about 25 various projects, as I say, minor and major. They're working on. The last thing I'll say is that they're considering creating a digester, and I don't remember the official name for it. But like those are those big round things that you see when you take off from the airplanes at Logan Airport. They have several of them located on an island, and they're basically digesting refuse. So that's it. Very active, very engaged committee.
I concur. Cliff is a remarkable source of information.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Yes.
All right, I'm
Mr.
going to move
Chair.
on to. Yes, David.
Sorry, David Brooks here. I just wanted to point out, due to some changes in membership recently, the loss of Greg Schwartz, as well as Councillor Zook sort of rotating off of the planning board, there are a number of vacancies that we need to fill at some point, preferably sooner than later. Those include the Planning Board Capital Improvement Program Committee, which typically meets a couple of times over the course of the summer. The Heritage Commission was formerly Greg Schwartz. The Pedestrian and Bicyclist Advisory Committee was formerly Councillor Zook. And also the Steering Committee for the Implementation of the Master Plan was also Mr. Schwartz. Those are positions that we want to fill. And if anyone has questions or interest in learning more about when those boards meet and what they do, please give me a call at any time, and we'll try to fill these positions at the next meeting.
Thank you, David. Yes, those are important positions we need to fill. Other business, very briefly, I've got 2 points. One, I believe I sent everyone a link to a webinar talking about the economics of municipalities across the country. I strongly urge everyone to watch them. There are 2 webinars, one an hour each. I think they're not only fascinating, but they're vital for a common understanding of how Lebanon needs to address development and taxation going forward. So please, if you've not watched either of them, take an hour, watch the first one. And then second, David, I'll just ask on the Bank Street, did they get their new documents in on time?
Mr. Chair, this is Tim Corwin, excuse me. We did receive a number of documents at the tail end of today. I have not had a chance to look through what was submitted. It looks like we received what we needed, but I can't confirm that with certainty at this point.
Fair enough. Okay, but we did receive something. All right. And then we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. So I'll take them in order as listed, November 25th of last year. Planning session, does anybody have any revisions?
Mr. Chair, this is Matt Hall.
Yes, Matt.
I guess either you or staff remind us, did we make, I'm trying to remember why this got pushed to now. Did we make substantial edits to this and then we were going back at these again?
No, I think it got, I don't know the answer to that question, but I think because we had one meeting that was canceled, it got delayed. But Tim or David, can you answer that?
Yes, this is David Brooks. I think it just got overlooked because this was the November work session and there is no December work session regularly. And so we missed getting it onto the first meeting in January, so we're catching up.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Does anyone have any changes they would like to make? Other than, as always, typos. Typos, please send to David directly, but if not, then I'll ask someone to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Oh, Chair, this is Kathy.
Kathy.
It's on page 8, and it's actually a correction to a previous approval of minutes, but it's referring to the city engineer as Brian Vincent, and it should be Brian. And I don't understand. I mean, I think that should be corrected.
So it's page 8, which line?
Line 9. It actually looks like somehow or other it's from a previous meeting, but it's incorrect. Referring to a city employee.
I agree with you. All right, we'll make that correction. Anything else? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 25th, 2019?
So moved.
Who is that? Kathy?
That's Laurel.
Laurel. Thank you, Laurel. And a second?
Second from Monroe.
Thank you, Joan. Any discussion? All in favor? I'm going to do a roll call. So I am in favor. Gorio?
Goyo's in favor.
Jim?
Counselor Jim Winnie in favor?
Laurel?
Laurel in favor.
Kathy?
Kathy votes yes.
Matt Hall?
Matt votes yes.
And Sarah? Sarah?
Sorry.
Sarah, are you voting in favor?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And did I
And
miss
Bruce?
Laurel?
Chair, you missed me. I'm voting yes, and that's Monroe.
I missed Joan. I'm sorry. I realized I missed someone. All right, so I have that as unanimous. And then we have a much shorter set of minutes from February 24th, 2020. Does anyone have any changes, corrections? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
This is Kathy. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Kathy. May I have a second?
Laurel,
I second.
Laurel seconds. Any discussion? All right, I'll do a roll call for the vote. I'm in favor. Gregorio?
Gregorio in favor.
Jim?
Counselor Jim Winnie in favor?
Laurel?
Laurel in favor?
I did it again. Joan?
Joan has just a quick question. I was absent for that meeting. Are we still allowing people who are absent to vote yes based
Yes.
on?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
yes.
Thank you. Kathy?
Kathy votes yes.
Matt?
Matt votes yes.
And Sarah?
Sarah votes yes.
1, 2. So I have that as unanimous. All right, we're a little over an hour through the meeting, so we're done really very well. Now we're going to come back to the larger part of the meeting, which is a discussion of the 401 Mount Support Dartmouth project. And Tim, may I turn it over to you?
Mr. Chair, Matt Hall here.
Yes, Matt, might you be recusing yourself?
I will, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Hello, Chair. This is Gregorio. I will be recusing myself as well.
All right, thank you, Gregorio. We're not voting on anything this evening, but I will keep that in mind for the future.
Okay, all right. Good, thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Tim Corwin. I think at the April 13th meeting, when the hearing was open, the applicant gave their presentation, and there were some questions from the board. We did not open it up for public comment at that time, as we had only a short amount of time to spend on the application tonight. Fortunately, we do have a little bit more time to dive deeper. What staff would recommend is that, well, let me back up. The applicant did submit a written response to some of the questions that were raised at the April 13th hearing by some of the planning board members. That was a 4-page letter that was included with the planning board's rather thin agenda packet for tonight, and that is currently available online. But between the last meeting and tonight, we've had ongoing discussions and additional review of the project, and discussions internally and with the applicant and their consultants. And so we've updated the staff memo. We have received some additional materials from the applicant. Most of those, we were receiving things up until the kind of the last minute, which is okay. So not everything we've received up until this point in time is in the planning board's hands, but most of it is because late this afternoon, staff did send an updated staff memo with the additional materials from the applicant that we had received up until then, and those include the letter from VHB that you already had because it was included in the agenda packet, but it also, the staff memo that was sent out this afternoon also included an open space exhibit, a limits of improvements exhibit plat, and also a revised application for waivers. Since sending out the staff memo, just to give you a heads up, we have also received an update from Mark Fougere, who is the applicant's consultant for the fiscal impact study. I know that Mr. Fougere had tried very diligently to get in touch with the school district, and we know that they are extraordinarily busy as well, and so they were finally able to speak this afternoon. It sounds like it was a good discussion, and Mr. Fougere did send an addendum to the planning board regarding his fiscal impact study based on the discussions that he's had with the school district since the last meeting. But we were thinking, we thought that was cutting it a little bit too close to tonight's meeting and did not forward that to the board at this time. I don't know if the applicant's team is familiar with the contents of the addendum, but if they are, they can speak to those tonight. If not, we can wait and address those at the next meeting at which this application will be heard. In addition to that, we did receive a document, a memo to the planning board from Phil Hastings, who is the applicant's legal counsel, regarding section 12.2 of the subdivision regulations, which are the open space regulations. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in just a second. But that's also something that we received pretty late. And so we decided not to forward that to the board for tonight, but that will certainly be included. Those two documents, Mr. Hastings' memo to the board regarding the open space regulations and Mr. Fougere's addendum to his fiscal analysis, those two items will be included in the agenda materials for the next meeting. As well, the materials that you received earlier this afternoon attached to the updated staff memo, those two will be included in the agenda packet because we want to make sure that those are available online and available to the public. So we are keeping track of everything that's coming in, and we're making sure that everything will be available to the public. So with all that said, I think what might make sense is to turn this over to the applicant to run through all the additional materials that they submitted, both in response to the planning board's questions and in response to additional comments received from staff, to run through those additional documents, answer those questions, to run through the additional waivers that were identified, and then to turn it back over to the board for questions and also to staff for staff comments. And then at that point, perhaps the application may be ready to receive public input. And I see Ms. Monroe is waving her hand, so I'll let the chair respond to that. Ms. Monroe is waving her hand.
I know, but in addition to that, I agree that we need more information from the applicant. I think we also should talk a little bit about site visit, those who were able to do so, and share the site visit comments with the board. So, Joan, I'll just ask you what your point is, and then turn it to the applicant. But I would ask the applicant to keep it as brief as possible, particularly as we haven't seen a lot of the documents, so that we can get on with the discussion, that we don't run into not sufficient time for a full discussion with what we already have. Joan, what's your comment?
My comment is that I've just opened up the email that was sent, I suppose, this afternoon, and I strongly object to us discussing anything that is in this memo. This memo is 16 pages long. It covers many different parts of the application. Not having been able to really look at it and study it and process it all, I feel that it is totally inappropriate for us as a board to be expected to intelligently discuss this. No amount of introduction that the applicant can give us would begin to help us go through this memo. So I will also add that in the past, other members of the planning board have joined me in saying to receive something of this quantity on the day of a project when we're not really expecting it because we have deadlines of when information is submitted to us. And we've allowed there to be a little bit of slack in getting short memos, just short little answers to questions, or answers to only one question perhaps. But this is too much information to even begin to think about discussing it tonight. I would like to move that, I'm not doing it, but I would very much like to move that this get put onto our next meeting. I hope other board members will agree if they have these 16 pages in front of them.
Right. I'm not.
Mr. Chair, this is Laurel.
Yes.
I would like to echo Ms. Monroe's comments. I simply do not feel that we have had the time to look at the voluminous documents that were sent to us this afternoon, and to have an intelligent conversation about all of the points raised in them. I understand that the applicants probably will give a wonderful presentation, but that still does not give us, the board, the time to fully digest what's in these documents.
Chair. Sarah Wells here.
Yes, Sarah.
I read the entire document once. I usually read documents like this 4 times. So despite the fact I read it once, or maybe because I read it once, I know how complicated it is. And for that reason, I agree with both Joan Monroe and Laurel Stavis that this needs not to be discussed today. It is too complex.
Chair,
Who's that?
Kathy.
Kathy.
I agree. And also, I wanted to point out, I can read this on my phone or on my computer, but I can't print it out because it's too big and my computer won't convert it to print it. So I hope that it's going to be mailed out to those of us who want to read it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I suggest that we have the applicant just go through the letter that was submitted to elaborate anything. I thought it was pretty clear and I thought it was well drafted, but just to go through that. And then I would like to talk about site visit. I know Joan and I had a site visit. I don't know if other members, but we can at least share with you. And then get into our questions. And then how much time is left, and maybe Tim could elaborate so that we have in mind the reasons for some of the waiver and other requests.
Chair?
I heard voice.
It's
Yes?
Kathy.
Yes, Kathy.
You're asking about a site visit, but from my information, that was canceled. I was never told that there was another opportunity to go there.
No, it was, sorry, then something got garbled in the transmission. The site visit itself was canceled, but members were encouraged to go on their own.
There's something in our regulations that say we need permission to go on a site visit.
Kathy, the permission was granted, and there was an email some weeks ago with a map of the site and the posts and all of the other information.
And I just feel that for the site that large, I don't feel comfortable exploring that site on my own. I would rather go when there is someone else there.
All right. Well, maybe there's someone else that could go.
Go there, but I don't want to go there on my own.
We'll see if we can figure out someone to partner with you for a site visit.
Mr. Chair, this is Laurel. So
yes.
you went through a series of steps, beginning with Tim going through the letter that was received. Could you do that again? I mean, are we not making a decision to delay consideration of these materials?
Yeah. Yes, we're not considering them as we would at a meeting for which we had received them in time. So what I would like to do is have the applicant speak to the letter that was submitted that we got with the package, answering questions from the last meeting, then talk about the site plan and input for other members from any of the members who have done a site visit, and then open it up to questions in general. Does that suit the members?
I'm sorry, I have a follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Can we adequately do that without first having taken in all of these documents and formed opinions on them? Can we have an informed discussion and ask informed questions if we have not had an opportunity to go through these documents in detail?
Well, we haven't had an opportunity to go through the document that Tim sent us this afternoon, but we've certainly had opportunity to go through all of the other documents that have been presented. And I'm hopeful that we can make use of the time tonight to talk about questions that individual members may have in regard to those documents.
Chair Garland, this is Monroe.
Yes.
I'm assuming that you keep referring to the letter, and I'm assuming the letter is what was included in our April 27 packet that we received a few days ago. And it's the applicant's answers to questions that we had asked. So this information was, it took me a while to figure out which quote letter you were talking about. And then looking through my huge pile, I realized, oh, you mean the letter that came. So perhaps that would be okay with the other members, because these are questions that we ask, and it's basically their answers to our questions. And it's only 3 pages long.
Can someone tell me when that came in and who sent it?
It was in the package that you should have received for this meeting.
Sometime last week.
Mr. Chair, this is David Brooks.
Yes, David.
The letter that I believe you are referring to is the one that is posted to the website as well. The letter itself is dated April 20th. And so it's on the city's website. I want to apologize. This is part of the difficulty in doing a 2-week continuation, because it really hamstrings both the applicant's ability to respond to questions and comments that are made by the board at one meeting. It takes them a few days to prepare responses and get them to staff. It takes staff a few days to review them and actually prepare information. So again, I appreciate the concerns that were expressed with respect to the information that was provided today. I don't know, there's just not enough time in a 2-week cycle to get it to you much sooner than the day of the meeting. Having said all that, I do think it is important to try to continue to make progress on this application. There's a lot to talk about. There's the applicant made a 45-minute presentation at the last meeting that could have engendered some questions, and I think it's appropriate to talk about those. Again, to the extent anyone has been to the site, as you've mentioned, Mr. Chair, it would be appropriate to talk about that. But it's important that you make progress, and if the board has questions, to try to relay those to the applicant so that they can continue to be making progress and working on answers, working to achieve to move this project forward. So again, I appreciate the frustration. It was always intended that we would walk through the material that was provided today, but if I understand if you're not prepared to do that, maybe it is appropriate, because we're going to be in the same situation on May 11th as we are right now. It's just 2 weeks away. There are other fairly large-scale applications that are going to try to get started on that. And so it may be appropriate when at whatever point you wrap up the discussion tonight, that maybe it's appropriate to consider some special meetings for this application and perhaps some of these other large-scale applications.
I agree, David. Thank you. All right, with all of that, may I ask the applicant to provide any additional comments that they wish on the April 20th letter?
Yep. Good evening. This is Dave Fenstermacher from BHB, and I have good news.
I'm sorry, could I interrupt just a second? My question is, do all of the other members have the letter in front of them at this time? That's what I'd like to know, because there's no point if people can't see something that we either did receive through the mail or could look up online right now. So that's my question before you begin. So I guess it's partially Laurel. Have you been able to find this letter?
Have it shown.
You do?
Yes.
This is
Okay.
Kathy. I have it.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, David.
Yes, so Dave Fenstermacher from VHB. And the good news is we have a little presentation and it is 100% about the letter. So we understand there's a lot of information, but we really wanted to just address what we talked about at the last hearing and then open it up. And I know you guys have a lot of things to catch up on, but I think as David and Tim said, this gives us an opportunity to just move things along. So I'm going to do it. I'll do a bring up my PowerPoint and we'll just walk through this. It basically mirrors what's in the letter, but this gives the public an opportunity to look at this as well. So again, tonight, the team's here. Michael Student Living, Christina's here, Dartmouth College, Dan's here, and then I'll be on. And it's myself and Eric Bednarik, our landscape architect, and Jason Plord, our traffic engineer. And the architect is here, Mark Muller's on. And then we've referenced a couple letters from Phil Hastings. He's on the line as well. So just a few things. We had the response to the initial planning board comments from the 413, and there were staff comments that were immediately after that as well. There's just a few things that are probably going to be in the letter, but at least this will be the intro to those. And then we'll just let Tim take over for the staff report and the public hearing portion. So Bruce, I think this was your question early on, was we're calling everything 4 stories. There, as you can see, the clubhouse, just the way the topography works here, to give a better pedestrian connection between the buildings and the clubhouse, there is a little half walkout basement. So to clarify, they are all 4 stories, but building 2 does have a little half basement that really allows the connectivity to the clubhouse. If not, you'd have all these series of steps and stairs and walls, and it just wouldn't be a smooth transition there. So hopefully that answers your question there. Well, on the
so Dave, people with handicaps would be in building number 2. Is that the idea? And they would have this as a way to get to the clubhouse?
All other buildings do have an ADA accessibility. For building 2, if we did not have this drop, they'd have to circulate. There wouldn't be a direct connection. So the other ones have the benefit of being further away and being able to have ADA connectivity through the sidewalks. But due to the proximity of this building to the clubhouse, yes, this provides elevators inside building 2 to drop down and have access to the clubhouse, which gives you access to the roadway. And
so let me just stop you there a second. Can I poll the members? Does everybody follow this? Is this clear?
Yes, this is Kathy.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dave. That's very helpful.
Yep. Okay. And then the fiscal impact report, again, this is one that we won't dig into because you guys need to read it, but that was one of the questions, Bruce, that you had. Right. And there was, I know there's a lot of back and forth trying to track down the superintendent. It sounds like there was a very productive phone call today. We're able to incorporate that into the report. And just the other pieces where we just need to reference, the natural resources and the drainage, that those were all covered in the reports that were submitted. They just weren't mentioned and referenced in the impact report. So I think we'll find that when you review that, that'll be clear. And I think we will definitely be prepared on 511 to discuss the fiscal impact report in a little more detail.
Yeah, it's not, I know it got labeled as fiscal, but
it's really
the regulation, just the impact, and fiscal is one chapter with it. So having all of that together will just help everybody understand the issues. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think this was Jones, the invasive species. And I think I'm just going to have Eric Bednarik, who's the landscape architect, just hop on. Eric, if you're there, just a quick overview of what we found and the changes that we're going to make.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Good evening, everyone. Again, Eric Bednarik with PHP, landscape architect. We did take a look at very closely our plant material list, and what we did find was that vinca was definitely invasive, and it was just a little confusing because it showed up on one list as invasive and another that it was not invasive. And it also showed up, as you see on this image here, on under Plants Database, which is one of the most well-known websites for finding native plant material that's in the Grafton County area. It's an introduced native. So there was just a little confusion with that. So what we did is we removed vinca from the plant list. Pachysandra is native in some areas of New England, but we ended up removing that regardless, just so that there was no confusion with that either. We verified all our other plant materials, whereas some may not be specifically native to Grafton Village, but they are native to the New England area. But no other plants that are on our plant list were found to be invasive. In regards to the seed mixes, we did speak with New England Wetland Plants, which is one of the most renowned plant distributor for native plant materials in New England. And we reviewed it with them, and they were quite adamant that there were no invasive plant species in their seed mixes. But what they did say is, when it comes to finalizing a seed mix, we could look at every single seed that's in the mixes that you've proposed, and we could, cross out various seed mixes that may not be specifically native to Grafton County. A difficult task, but they can do a custom mix. But they were quite adamant that they do not distribute invasive plant species mixes whatsoever. Now it's just a matter of whether it may not be native specifically to Grafton County. Those edits can definitely be made to the plans and the seed mixes as requested.
Thank you. Joan, that was your comment?
Yes, this is Joan. May I make a comment?
Sure, please.
Thank you very much for checking it. Vinca and Pachysandra were two that I was very concerned about, and I have personal experience with both of them. And they are, once they get into the woods, they can just keep going and going and going. They know no barriers. So I'm glad that you've removed those two. I had, in one of the books that I looked up, I had also read that the Viburnum dentatum arrowwood and the Spirea little princess were also questionable. And then I also question grasses. Ornamental grasses are, that's another area that can really become a major mistake if it turns out that they shouldn't have been put in. One of the reasons, something that I would suggest from many, many years of working with invasives and personally pulling many, 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 many garbage bags full and then bringing them to the Lebanon waste facility, is that that in New Hampshire by law, there are only a very small number of invasives that are not allowed to be sold, and that's not by any means all of the ones that should not be planted. But when that was the amount that the New Hampshire legislature was able to agree on with input from the sellers of seeds, and so it's very hard to get the sellers to agree not to sell something that they already have in stock. So I would have to say that asking for references from people who actually sell the seeds is not necessarily the most reliable place to look for them. But I do appreciate your efforts, and I do appreciate that you'll continue to look at the seed mixes, and I really hope you take it to heart what I'm trying to say about those who are selling them versus people who have no financial stake in whether they're sold or not, but have a ecological and biological reason to be opposed to 1 or 2 or 3 or 50 plants. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. All right, so that's what we'll do. We'll plan on just taking a deeper dig into those, the other ones you listed, and hopefully we'll be able to address those before the next hearing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right,
Oh,
and then
if I could add, having walked on that property and seen that absolutely glorious wetland that's to the, I think it's to the west, on the western part of your property, that would be just a tragedy to introduce things in there. And it's only a matter of time until the plants walk through the landscape. And to infiltrate that area with even more invasives than have already gotten in there, to know that they were intentionally planted would just be a disaster that could have been prevented instead of created. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And then I think this was a question that a couple of folks had about basically like who's going to be living in the building. So just to kind of go over this, the applicant has site control through a long-term ground lease with the landowner, which is Dartmouth. It's targeted to graduate students and Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center employees. And according to the lease, if the units are not fully leased to graduate students by a certain time period, eligibility is then open to the medical center employees. And then after that, it goes to employees of the college. And based on the rules from the college, the undergraduates are not eligible to lease at the property and are housed on other college provided housing in Hanover. So hopefully that clarifies that it goes graduate students, then medical center employees, and then college employees, with undergraduates living in other properties in Hanover.
Laurel, I think that was your question. Are you satisfied?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Dave.
And then just a couple other ones. There was the questions about the eyebrow windows, whether those were designed for loading, and we reviewed that with the architects, and those are designed for the snow loading. And then there was another question about, it was a good question, how does this compare to Sachem? And that one really is those are graduate student housing for students who already have a spouse or family or potentially have roommates they want to live with. And this one is more, the new project is more for, young single graduate students who are looking to get paired. So it's more of like one who want to have a reduced rent, who are sharing rooms with maybe people they don't even know yet. But the Sachem's more established for people that are planning to be living with each other already.
Kathy, those were yours?
Yes, and the one about blasting, yes, thank you.
Oh, blasting. I didn't write it down, but yes, we confirmed with we had a number of borings on site and didn't encounter the ledge or bedrock, so there's not any anticipated blasting on the project.
Oh, thank you for that, Dave.
Yep. And then there was
yep, please, go ahead.
And then that got us through our letters, and then just because I've heard what you've all said tonight, we won't dig into these other ones, but just kind of to overview that there's some additional waiver requests that are coming in, and these are really what we talked about last time. There's some of these that have to do with the 200 feet and carrying things beyond that, and some of these other ones are things that we discussed with the fire department about access behind the buildings, that they're okay with how we have it, and some landscaping. And one of them is, again, the certificate of occupancy, about how we're looking to occupy the clubhouse for leasing purposes prior to the whole project getting constructed. And there is a site plan requirement that you can't occupy until everything's built. So it's kind of going into that temporary occupancy. So I think we can, let's save these slides for May, if that makes sense. And then
Dave, maybe we'll have time to briefly go through them, just so that you can help prepare our thoughts before we dive into those documents. But let's see if we got time. We're in good shape at the moment. So
all right, these are just whatever you want to do now is fine. So I can save these for later.
Yeah, if you would save them for later, we'll come back to you.
Okay.
I'd like to move to site visit. So Joan and I did a site visit, and I've got to share with members, I thought I was going for half an hour, an hour. We spent 2.5 hours, and I highly recommend anytime you can get Joan to take you on a site visit, you will learn a ton of stuff. Did anyone else manage thus far to do a site visit? All right, that's too bad. I encourage everybody to do so. Kathy, I will get back to you and see what we
Yeah.
can work out.
Yeah, this is Kathy. I was really expecting that it would be rescheduled. And does anybody know for sure now what the limitations are for outdoors groups of people going? I mean, we can't have what number of board members together without an official meeting?
Kathy, it's not so much board members, it's anybody. So we've got board members, staff, applicant that could easily get us near to 10. And the governor's put a cap of 10. And if we have people from the public show up, then we have to cancel it. Which is why we said, instead of trying to do an organized site plan, we'll encourage individual members to go and do their own site plan. So
yeah,
I'll be in contact with you to figure out something. Maybe you and I'll do it all over again. Although I won't guarantee you anywhere near the type of information that I got from Joan. So Joan, might I ask you to give an overview of what we saw? Joan, are you there?
She looks like she's there, but I don't hear her.
Maybe she's got herself on mute.
And Bruce, just for reference, I brought up the sheet.
Yes.
that
All
we
right.
pulled together.
So,
And that might be good to show too how a lot of these stakes are in the open space. If there's concerns, maybe there's something that you can just see from pulling into the driveway. Just for
right.
reference.
So perhaps you could just highlight, I see your cursor, just highlight there's an existing driveway that you turn into, which is across from a building on the other side.
Yeah.
That looks to be a private residence and a business. And so there's a driveway there, which will not be the actual driveway. The actual driveway we determined will be some, I don't know, 30 feet.
Yeah, it's just north, but this driveway does bring you right to the clubhouse. So it's a great reference point for we're comparing the site to what you're seeing out with the stakes.
Right, right. And the stakes were very clear, but it is a big piece of property. It's all very flat, very open, except if you go over to the left-hand side of what you're showing, you're into the forest.
Yeah.
Some of the, maybe you just give a comment as to how much of the forest will disappear with this project.
Yep. So you can see, so for building 1 and 2, there's nothing coming down. Building 3, the tree line, so it will be this last leg of building 3, and then that gets cleared to the back of curb. And then for building 4, for the most part, the majority of the building is in the woods as well. So it's probably the back, 20% of the site is where the tree clearing is, but the majority of the buildings are in the open area.
And between those two, yeah, sorry, is that Joan?
Kathy, I have a question. Is there going to be any kind of sign at the roadway identifying the name of the development? At the entrance off of Mount Support Road?
In the future, or for the purposes of the site visit? In the future?
No, in the future, a permanent sign.
It's going to be in this island when you pull in. It's not going to be on the road.
Okay.
With the understanding that it's, the residents will know once they get in, when they get here, but the sign will help with the leasing and identification.
Okay.
Yeah, we might I'm sorry, this is Christina Vagan with Michael's Student Living.
Yes.
There might be just some temporary leasing signs when we have the community building open, but we won't have any permanent gaudy signs out on the street.
Thank you for that. All right, just staying with the site plan. So if you could bring your cursor down a little bit. So between the two buildings to the left, there are what look to be very old roads that go off into the woods. We went for a wander back there. and came across a wetlands, looked like a beaver dam had built a small pond back there. And I think water from there trickles down. There's not really a brook, but there is water between the buildings, right? There's a little bit of wet.
There is a wetland here. Yeah, there's a wetland. Yeah, there's a wetland. I should probably change my color to blue for us. But yeah, this is that wetland, the existing wetland that's here. And our wetland scientists found that was more fed by the saturated groundwater and the leaching out of the ground than it was a connection to the wetlands up here. But yes, there is the trail system's back here, so there are some paths that head back here, and I think it kind of separates these two different wetlands. There's a little trail that's back there. But the intent is to keep this wetland intact, except for this tiny piece that we talked about the last meeting. But I think it's going to be a nice feature in the buildings, around the buildings, and for the folks there to kind of break up the open space there.
Let me check. Joan, are you there?
This is Kathy.
Yes, Kathy.
You were saying something about trickling down. Are you saying that water from the big wetlands in the woods is going down across where that parking lot is? To the.
No, I was saying it doesn't do that. These two wetlands are connected this way. But the one that's in the middle is a standalone one that gets basically the water in it's from the saturated soils in the groundwater.
Yeah,
so
I would concur with that.
We're not disconnecting that. The pavement we're putting in is not disconnecting this wetland from the rest of the systems. It's its own wetland.
I heard Bruce say something. There's not a brook, but it trickles down. So that's what confused me.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Kathy. But it sort of peters out and goes in different directions.
If I could say something, this is Christina, the applicant. One of the things that we also found in our geotechnical testing is that the ground is very wet and it doesn't percolate down. So one of the things we had to add was a stormwater retention. So just generally the water stays, it's very sort of muddy and the water table is very high. It's just a very wet site.
I have a very specific question. In our wanderings, we found two black posts with locks on top of them. One in about the area that we were just discussing, and one over near one of the buildings in the middle of the fields. I'm guessing they're connected to something underground.
They're old. Sorry, Bruce. This is David again. Those are old monitoring wells associated with a project from a long time ago. They're still just in place. We plan on decommissioning those. They're just pipes for monitoring the groundwater.
Okay, they just look very fresh. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I think Dartmouth College was able to find the records of those and the project it was from.
Okay, I think we've lost Joan, unfortunately.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're here, Joan.
Yeah.
So hopefully some of my comments, but I'm sure you have others to share with board members.
Yes, I definitely recommend that more members go and walk the land. It's very easy to walk because the part that's open is open. It was obviously a field for harvesting grass, animal fodder. It's been kept open as a field, which is good. And then when you're not in the field, there's really nice old roads and old paths to walk on. So there's the footing. The footing is pretty easy, and it's hard to get lost. I also noticed when we were out there, and I remarked on it to Bruce repeatedly, that the ground was that, and now I hear that you're explaining it, and I'm by way of saying this, informing the other board members. And as we were just walking around between the buildings, the ground just felt really squishy to me. And I was thinking, well, I know it's squishy in the spring, but it was a very, very beautiful sunny, dry day. And it just seemed like, and so now what I'm hearing from you is that, yes, indeed, the whole field is very wet. And it's kind of remarkable because the farthest from the road does go uphill, but it's not such a steep or a large hill that would usually explain that much groundwater. So I'm safe to assume that the water table is very high, very close to the surface. And is that, how do you deal with that as builders?
That's why it's going to take 2 years to build. It's going to be a lot of groundwater management, but it is, we're finding that it was, 2 foot to 2 feet below the current surface. So we're being careful with our grading. There's going to be a lot of temporary dewatering and things like that that are going to be required by the contractor, but it's going to take a normal building construction period and stretch it out to make sure that we're handling the groundwater appropriately.
Okay, I noticed that it was unusual in that the wetland that is in the center of the 4 buildings, it didn't appear to have any inlet or outlet. Yet there were signs that it was clearly a wetland. At the day that we were there really was almost no water in it at all. But I also noticed in the little driveway, right alongside the little driveway that takes you in, it's hard packed for just a short while and then it's just mud, that there had been a trench scraped along the side of the road. And so I don't know, I couldn't tell whether that was taking water out of that central wetland, or I couldn't figure out where that water was coming from. But it was moving, there was a trickle moving through it. So I didn't know whether that just well, it really is a wet site, or this water really is coming from the wet.
If you dug any sort of trench, it's gonna percolate with the groundwater and carry that. So that might have been what that was.
Okay, and I have a question. If you were planning to leave the old stone walls that line most of that wetland in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we're working on. That's definitely something we'd like to preserve. So that was part of, after we came back from the conceptual review, that was a lot of things we worked on, was pulling the roadway away from the wetland and the pedestrian walkway, and the building 3 we pulled down. So that's something that maybe in the field we'll work on, but I know our landscape architect would like to keep that intact and work it into the design.
Yep.
So
the pathway goes right next to it. We're going to conserve.
Yeah.
We're going to conserve those stones. It's
going to be a nice feature.
Now, of course, you'll have to take out the old barbed wire that's in there, and there's also a fair amount of trash. There I counted, I think, at least 5 look like car tires, old car tires, and there were couple of old lawn chairs and a couple of new plastic chairs, and other, the usual, a few empty beer cans, and a few small things like that. But and some of the wall has been kind of moved around in such that it might be a little bit dangerous, but other sections of it were just the way they were just untouched, the way they've been being covered over with moss and other plantings, and it's just delightful because it gives you like a history right there. There's like a history lesson. You're like in an archaeological dig. So without having to do anything. So I would strongly hope that as much of that central area can be preserved, and the stone walls act as a sort of a barrier to the, a sort of a protective safety barrier for the wetland. Although
it's like a natural indicator, right, that the wetlands are there.
And of course, there's some really, really beautiful trees. There's some big old trees, and there was a stand of something. I don't know. I don't remember what kind of trees it was, but there was a whole bunch of baby trees at one point, a little nursery of one kind of tree. But I think that's all I can think of at the moment.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
I heard someone say, Mr. Chair, who is that?
Laurel?
Laurel?
There is a New Hampshire statute that prevents altering stone walls, old stone walls. I haven't had time to look up the most recent version, but I'm sure the builders are familiar with it. And if not, I would just urge you to familiarize yourself.
Good
Right,
point.
and-
Thank you for that,
yeah.
Laurel.
And just
Sure.
another heads up that is part of our state permitting that we have submitted pictures and photos in a report to the New Hampshire District of Historical Resources. So we should be getting feedback from them shortly too. So I'm sure they'll have some input on the stone walls as well.
This is
Chair,
Monroe.
Kathy.
I was just going to add that there are a lot of stone walls in the back part of the property that's to the west, that's near the wetland and the beaver dam. And I was wondering if there was any possibility at all of some of that property back there being put into permanent conservation. I don't see how it could be developed, but just because you think it can't doesn't mean that it won't. With fill and bulldozers, anything is possible. But I was wondering if the applicant would consider that, because once you get back and you see that beautiful pond, I mean, that to me would be a major, major bonus for the people living here.
Yeah.
Living
So
in this place.
You'll see it in the package.
Okay.
But that's one of the things we talk about, the open space, and this was the area that the applicant was dedicating for open space. And it's really that I think it's about 150 feet that runs from the road back. And again, you can see that's where the pond starts and the stones end. It's really, like you said, you can't do anything back here anyway. And I think, you know, this is all Dartmouth College's land and it abuts the other Dartmouth College land, and there's other potential opportunities down the road. But for right now, we're focusing on, as part of this project, being able to dedicate that swath that's really going to separate the development, protect this area, and which in turn will protect, you know, the remainder of the lot.
This is Monroe. I certainly hope, I'm not seeing, I'm sorry, we have not seen this yet. This is part of the new
Nope.
packet that we
Yeah,
just
that's
got?
in the package. Yep.
Okay, because it looks like what you showed did not include the actual pond, because there is wetland that runs north to south along, you know, that's within your
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
But then the beautiful pond is it's a little more farther south. And it's
Yes.
an actual pond of water. It's just really beautiful.
Is it
And
on this
protected
lot?
all around by woods is quite beautiful.
It's on the lot. As you can see in the lot, the overall lot's really big. We're calling this area our project area up here, and that's where we were showing the dedicated open space. But again, it probably makes more sense to let you folks read through that report
Okay.
and the memo, and we can talk about it. But I think that's something that we can talk to Tim and David about as well, knowing that that's probably going to come up as part of your review.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, this is Kathy.
Yes, Kathy.
I have a couple of questions. So there's a driveway cut in there existing. Was there anything built on this lot other than having that driveway there just to get in and mow fields?
Yeah, there was a small house.
About where on the lot was that?
I believe it was right off the road.
Yeah.
So right where his pointer is.
Probably right where the clubhouse is.
The reason I asked is because I'm going back to that comment someone made earlier about monitoring wells, and I'm trying to figure out why someone would have those back in the woods.
Yeah, there was a oil tank for the house and there was a small leak. So it was removed and it was cleaned up. They demolished the house and they excavated all the dirt, and then they installed the monitoring wells. And then they, for the state, were to watch the water, which they did. And then they had a no further action letter, which that information can be provided to the planning board. it came
So
up.
this- So the site, the wetlands aren't contaminated now and those wells are no longer needed? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct, yes. They got a clean bill of health on the cleanup. I believe it was in 2000. I can send that exact information to the planning staff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair
Joan?
Garland, Monroe. I'm assuming that the applicants will remove I think it was either three or two sides of the wooden foundation that are right near the beginning of, the wetland that's in the middle.
Yeah, we'll clear that
Okay,
out.
that one will be removed.
Yep.
And then there was also, I don't remember whether it was concrete, but there was some kind of concrete construction of some type also there. That will be removed.
Yeah, we're basically going to clear the site and level it out.
Okay, and then there's also what I guess to be an old hunting cabin that's actually right on that pond. It's actually built pretty much right in the wetlands, and the roof is caved in. But the examples of the logs and the two walls are still standing, and the log construction is also quite beautiful. Again, it's like an archaeological dig. I don't know how much of that could be left. It would be wonderful if all of it could be left and just let the trash that's by it be cleaned up.
I would say anything beyond the wildlife corridor is not going to be touched.
Okay.
So in the pond area.
Because
this is the limit of the pond, and that's our limit of work is beyond the limit of the pond.
Okay, because what I took to be a little hunting camp had a pile of old screen doors that was just horrible and with broken and bent metal. I mean, very unsafe. But the log cabinet itself was, well, it certainly would be unsafe if you tried to live in it, but just standing and looking at it, it was actually quite beautiful.
Thank you for that, Joan. Any further comments on our site visit? Any questions?
This is Gregorio. I have a question about the wildlife corridor, and so I can see on the rendering that it goes right up against the prop where the building is going to go, or looks like a parking lot, right on the edge. Yeah. So is there, when you build right up, against this corridor, what kind of an impact does it have on wildlife? What kind of an impact will it have on the wildlife that's traveling through there?
During construction or after the fact?
Both.
Yeah. Well, our limit of work, there's the 150 feet here. I know that the adjacent lot has 150 as well that they're respecting. Our limit of work in construction I will say during construction, we're probably going to be, just based on disturbance and things like that, we're probably 25 to 30 feet into it, but then we're going to reestablish it with the, similar meadow mix there. That's probably something that we should look into a little bit to kind of give a more informed answer.
Chair, this is Kathy.
Yes, Kathy.
I'd like to ask the applicant how you're handling trash and recyclables on the property. Is that designated on this?
Yeah, you can see it on the plans. We have enclosed areas for all the buildings that have recycle and a dumpster.
One of the things that you notice in the Hanover area is a lot of graduate students and other people come from other areas of the country where bears and other animals are not frequently in built-up areas. And I think it would be very important for you to figure out and educate your residents so that they don't dispose of garbage and trash in a way that acclimates those animals to residential areas, since you're so close to that corridor there.
That's a great point, and we will definitely take that into account. The goal is to have very frequent pickups. So we're not going to be harboring food wastes, but point noted, definitely.
It's probably, strong enclosures and a combination of education of residents.
Right. No, that's a great point. Yeah, we're going to have the strong enclosures and the steel enclosures, and they'll be right by each building. Frequent pickups, but yeah, that education is very important. Thank you.
So Joan, may I close out our site
I had
visit
one other-
comment?
I'd like to make a comment to Kathy's comment, if I may.
Please.
This is Joan. Two things. Excellent comment and note, Kathy, about people coming from areas maybe more urban where they don't realize how many animals we have running around here. Not to mention that this land abuts a very, very large undisturbed tract, except for lots of mountain bike trails that are only from like the last 5 years. Out west for bears, and they actually have bear garbage cans, and the people in certain areas are required to have them. And that might be something to consider for this development. And also, we always are hearing about the animals coming to bird feeders after the winter's over and the bears come out of hibernation. So if people were going to be putting up any bird feeders, that would need to be taken down. And then also outdoor grills also attract. So whatever areas there's going to be grilling should take into consideration that where its placement is could either attract or repel critters. So this, a couple of other suggestions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that, Joan.
Mm-hmm.
All right, if I may, I'm going to move on to a different subject, which is cars and parking. So I've got several questions. Could you just tell us, I'm going to call it the model of your graduate students. I'm just trying to understand what your expectations, whether you've had conversations with people who might be living there. Your opinion that they would be using the shuttles provided by the college to go between their residences and their classes, and having a car for entertainment and weekends and that sort of thing. Where do you see that? Describe that for me, if you would.
So this is Christina with Michaels. As Dave had mentioned before, these are going to be individuals renting by the bed. So unlike what you see in Sachem Village or what you see in standard multifamily properties, where you lease by the unit and you'd have a roommate or you'd have a significant other or you'd have a family, these are unrelated individuals who'd be sharing or per se co-living with one another in sharing a kitchen and sharing a living room. So a lot of them would have cars. The college and we did a focus group, I guess it was back in January, to understand who was driving, who uses advanced transit, who would use the shuttle. And it really depends on the type of graduate student. The folks who did show up for the meeting, we found that a lot of them were medical students and researchers. So a lot of them were leaving their houses or leaving their apartments early in the day and not getting back until later in the evening. So a lot of them were driving their own cars. Or one of the things that we are going to do, it's not a college provided shuttle, it's actually a private shuttle provided by us as the owner and the manager, is we are going to provide the shuttle that would take the students to both the medical center and take them into Hanover, and it would supplement the schedule that Advanced Transit provides. They are currently providing service on peak hours, and our shuttle service would address all the demands during the day, but also in the evening and on the weekends. So we foresee that the individuals would have their cars and they would use it, as you suggest, on the weekend and in the evening. And we would hope that we would try to get them to not use their cars as much. But generally what we see in a lot of our graduate student locations, especially such as these, where we're about 3 miles from the campus, they often have, each individual has their own car.
Can you give us an idea of how frequent shuttles will run?
So one of the things that we were working on, and this is one of the comments that we've shared in some of the responses to the planning staff's questions, is we would like to ideally work with Advanced Transit so that we're not putting on more buses if they're already running service. So it depends on, we'll start a schedule and we'll try to run it every half hour. We currently have 2 stops on our property. We'd run it every half hour during, peak demand hours and see how that works, see how the ridership works. And then we'll use the data that we track to cater to how the ridership works. So right now, we're assuming that we would have it pretty much, I think it's like after 7, it would run like every hour till probably about midnight. And then it would begin early.
And then a reduced schedule on the weekends?
Yeah, a reduced schedule on the weekend. So that, I mean, what I've done and found out in my research and reading the reports for Advanced Transit, it's really hard to get around on the weekend. So that's really, I think, when we might decide that we need to do more shuttle service on the weekends, and maybe they'll rely more on Advanced Transit during the week. I don't know, we'll see, and we'll alter it as we, as we lease up and as we get to know our students and our residents more.
I'm guessing the classes are during the weekday, but students would want to access the libraries on the weekends.
Well, we have some during the weekdays, but the graduate program is a lot different than the undergraduate program. So there are research and there are studios. If you're doing fellowships, say you're a medical student or you're in business, you'll have your own office space. So they're not necessarily traditional hours. They might work till like 11. But usually Monday through Friday, but they're usually earlier hours and later hours than you'd see like undergraduates.
All right, that's helpful. Thank you. There's in the package that we first got, there's a letter from Hanover questioning where the cars from the residents will wind up in Hanover.
Right. So our hope is we reduce the demand on cars and parking, and the people who do have cars and will bring cars, they will stay at their residences, and we'll be able to keep people off the roads and in our shuttles.
But should people choose to, should graduates choose to drive their cars, they would park on the existing college parking lots?
If they could find parking, I would have to defer to the college to see what's available, or they would have to accommodate for themselves on the public parking and what's available there.
Because clearly Hanover has a parking issue.
Right. Yeah, as do most downtowns.
Yeah.
Chair, this is
Yes.
Kathy.
Kathy?
With regard to this parking, now you were saying that you're renting these units by the beds. So if you had a 1-bedroom apartment and you were renting to a married couple, you'd be renting 1 bed, 2 beds. I mean, how do you figure out how many, like sometimes married couples have only 1 car, whereas 2 people might have 2 cars.
Right. Well, we went back and we looked into the code, and we looked and we thought, hey, it was one of the examples we were looking at. We were like, okay, if this was a 1-bedroom, your requirement for parking, I think the way the zoning works is 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. So if you look at the slide, it's 1.5. So I think your requirement is, even if it's a couple, you would assume 1.5 spaces. So here, if we had a 2-bedroom, there'd be 2 individuals. There's a higher likelihood that there would be 2 cars for 2 people who don't know each other than if it was, 2 people who are married fighting over 1 car in a 1-bedroom.
So you're going for a conditional use to up your parking spaces.
Yeah, we were looking to do 125%. So we're not trying to do 150%. And I would say what we would do is, if we didn't need them, I wouldn't build them. It's really just contingent upon meeting the needs of our residents. I mean, these are not income generating parking spaces. It's really just making sure we meet the needs of, the people who live with us.
I suspect you're going to need them.
Sorry, is that Kathy?
Yes. I just said I suspect you're going to need every one of them.
We believe so, based on other projects we've done, and especially given, we're 3 miles away from campus. We're not, directly across the street or, within even a mile. We can encourage as much bike ridership and advanced transit use and shuttle use, which we would love to, but still, I mean, if you looked at it, 2 unrelated people, that would be, over 600 parking spaces.
If I could refer to the letter that was in our original package, the VHB letter from April 3rd, there's a question regarding surface parking. And in the response, you note that unfortunately, due to height restrictions set forth in the zoning bylaw, parking under the building is not possible. And I didn't understand that. Why couldn't you build parking underground?
So that was a comment that came from the Regional Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission asked us why we didn't put our parking underneath the footprint of the buildings. If we put the parking underneath the footprint of the buildings, you would obviously raise the building height because we have to still hit the amount of units in order to keep the rents affordable. And you would also add costs. So when you put a structured parking space into the base of the building, it costs you about 2 to 3 times the cost as it does to do a surface parking space. So that would cost more to construct. And often when you do structured parking, you would have to charge for those parking spaces. So those would cost, I don't know, $150 a month or $100 a month for the tenants to rent. And we're trying to keep these units affordable for graduate students.
And you have a wet site.
Yeah, because we were thinking it wouldn't be underground parking. It would be like a pedestal parking. The first floor would be the parking, and then you'd have your 4 stories of residence above. That's really the only way it's feasible on this wet site. And then that brought us over the height requirement.
And you couldn't go underground because then, I mean, you're literally digging into a puddle, and then that costs a ton of money too.
Okay, thank you. And then just it occurred to me to ask the question. I'm sure I can guess the answer, but have you thought about pricing beds as one price and then bed and parking as 2 separate?
Well, we typically do that where we have structured parking in other locations, typically in the city, we'll do that. When we had our initial staff meeting, we considered doing covered parking like they have at Timberwood. But we found that due to the elevation changes, to do covered parking, the changes in grade and to do the foundations was cost prohibitive. One of the things we've been charged with since we were selected to be the development partner here is our rents are going to be the same as Sachem Village's. The graduate housing here for these new buildings is going to be pretty much comparable to what graduate housing currently is on campus and in North Park. So we're restricted in order to keep things at a certain affordability level. So we have to make these like smart construction decisions. I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know if Bruce was asking about covered parking or just in general.
No, just in general. So is parking at Sachem free or sort of comes with the rental?
I believe so. Dan, are you?
I'm still here. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Chair, this is Kathy.
Yes, Kathy.
I wonder if the applicant has come up with the number of studio 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom units they're proposing out of 309. Can you give us that breakdown?
Yes, I can do that. Actually, just give me 1 second. I just have to open the attachment and I will also send it to you after this email. Sorry, I should have had that readily available.
Yeah, I couldn't. Do we have it in our?
I had it in the text message I sent you. Sorry about that. Oh, shucks. Am I even in the right project? There we go. Sorry, guys. Okay.
Sorry, I thought I had it.
So we have 73 one bedrooms. We have 188 two bedrooms. We have 3 bedrooms, and we have 45 4 bedrooms. I can do the percentages in the math, but it's going to take me a little bit longer to do that.
Any studios?
No studios. We have some one bedrooms that are smaller in size in order to give a more affordable price point. So they're like smaller one bedrooms.
So when you say you charge by the bed, do you mean you charge by the bedroom, or you charge, there's more than one bed in a room? Like, what is?
So we charge by the bed. So like, for example, if it's a 2-bedroom, there'll be 2 people living there, and then they share the living room space. If it's a 4-bedroom.
No, but if it's a 2-bedroom and 2 people live there, then you're charging by the bedroom, not the bed.
Oh, you're right. Okay, sorry. It's just a common expression. I'm sorry. Yeah. So by the bedroom, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from board members?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
This is David Brooks. I wonder, this has been a pretty good conversation, and I thank you all for moving this along a little bit. I wonder if it is possible, since the board has had the plans themselves since April 13th and the original memo and some of the materials, I wonder if it would be possible for Tim Corwin to just preview some of the issues that you will be seeing in the memo that was sent out earlier today.
Well, David, before then, I don't know if we'll have time, but in the rather large packet we received prior to that meeting, we also had a traffic study that hopefully everybody has reviewed, and I was going to ask the applicant to speak to that traffic study.
Okay.
Jason, are you still on?
I am, yes. I'm sorry, I kind of it got a little jumbled there with the speaker on my end. What was the question?
Well, we received this very extensive traffic study.
Oh, yes.
And I thought that, as we have had it, this is a good opportunity for you to speak to it.
Sure, not a problem at all. I touched upon it a little bit at our last meeting, but essentially what happened was that we are representing the 4 developers in the area separately. So we were able to share a lot of the resources that we've used. So for example, for the hospital expansion project, those traffic counts were collected back in August. And so as the 3 other residential developments on Mount Support Road came forward, one of the comments from the planning department was, can you get some updated traffic counts? So we did. And those updated traffic counts were collected in January. We wanted to wait until the Dartmouth College was back in regular session. This was all before the whole coronavirus took over and everybody has to do online learning. So traffic volumes were actually up and running at that time. So I believe that they were collected on January 7th. So, and they were collected at 2 locations. The southern location was the unsignalized intersection of Old Etna Road, Heater Road, and Mount Support Road. And then we also looked at the northern intersection, which is a signalized intersection of LaHaye Drive and Mount Support Road. And those 2 intersections you're going to probably hear the same conversation that I'm going to be having now for the other 2 developments that will be coming on later on as part of different applications. But the traffic counts for all 3 of these studies used the January 7th traffic counts at these 2 locations. Now for this development, what we had done was we had applied a seasonal adjustment to be able to get to peak month conditions, which is in accordance with New Hampshire DOT guidelines. We also included the background developments as part of this project, the Altaria development, ICV, and the Dartmouth Hitchcock expansion. Since this project was in before the Saxon and Braverman projects, those two projects are in after this one, so that they will be using the Dartmouth College housing development as a background developments. So just to kind of put everything in line, Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center came in first, and then this development came in second, Saxon came in third, and Braverman came in fourth, as far as the order as we're going through this. So then what we had done was we had grown the traffic volumes up for 1 year for to 2021 conditions. And then in accordance with New Hampshire DOT guidelines, we had to go another 10 years on top of that. So we looked at 2021 and 2031 traffic volume conditions at both ends of this corridor. And really at the end of the day, what we look at as traffic engineers is we have a lot of different guidelines to follow. The first one is what is your impact going to be? If we're going to send 100 vehicles per hour or more through an intersection, then there's a chance that we're going to be having an impact. The reason for that is because there's usually going to be an increase of delay of 10 seconds or more, which then would require some kind of an improvement. That improvement could vary in so many different ways. You could be looking at additional travel lanes. You could be looking at different types of traffic control. In this case, we are not having any kind of a significant impact because we're not sending 100 vehicles per hour through any of these intersections. So really based on the findings of this study and based on the peer review that was conducted, and we had our staff review meeting back in March, what ended up happening was that from Keach Nordstrom, Stephen Keach, he did the peer review. He found that he had no issues with the project. He said that everything was done in conformance with standard traffic engineering practice. The only comment that he really had was that we overestimated our impacts because we did not take a credit for any kind of a shuttle or bus system. So all of the cars that were generated as part of this traffic study were thought to be as regular vehicles, regular automobiles, and not buses or shuttles. So if you're going to have more shuttle service and more bus service, then you're going to have less cars on the road than what we had predicted. I hope that kind of summarizes everything enough.
I'll let other members comment. I'm just to project, and my mind says that you've got exactly where my mind is on your slide. LaHaye Mount Support intersection is going to get very, very busy with people coming up Mount Support from the new developments, from developments that are coming onto market, but have it opened up on 120. And then the connection between the 120 Centera, people turning left to go to the hospital, hitting that intersection. You know, I hear you, but my heart says something's going to give. That's just a lot of volume that's all on at one. Yes,
Chair,
who's that?
This is Kathy. You know, with 600 people living on this site and wanting to go to class at 9 o'clock in the morning, a shuttle bus is not going to take them, a shuttle bus. Even an advanced transit bus isn't going to fit 600 people. So, and that's one site, and there are 4 right here along Mount Support that are, you know, being projected. It's I mean, it just boggles the mind to think that they're not going to be 100 vehicle trips going through that intersection.
Now, I just want to make sure that I'm clarifying this. As part of this development, we are not sending 100 vehicles per hour through that intersection. Now, combined, the 3 residential developments along this corridor that are coming in, absolutely, they're going to have more than 100. But as far as this project by itself, it does not. And that's not even taken into account any kind of a credit associated with the shuttle service. So this is just all automobiles.
Does that mean that if one large development at a time is done, that nobody has to trigger that 100 impacts situation?
That's a very good question, and I'm going to explain it this way. You have an amazing planning department within the city. They saw this coming, and they have been very proactive with all the developers in the area. So they have been having meetings with these developers and the applicants to try to get everybody on the same page to come up with improvements along the corridor. And this developer, as well as the three others that I've mentioned, are all in favor and have been participating in these conversations.
So I'm just to clarify for me, and I'm certainly not up to speed on those conversations, but why are we looking at a traffic study that says this doesn't trigger any impact study because this is fewer than 100 vehicles per hour when we know that they're going to be more than 100 vehicles per hour together combined?
Yep, you're absolutely right. And that's why the planning department had the foresight to start these conversations going months ago, and they've been continuing. And so ultimately what it is that it's trying to figure out a way to be able to have the improvements implemented along the Mount Support Road corridor and including the signalized intersection.
Right.
So
Good to hear.
you're absolutely right, and that's a very good question that you've had, and that's why, you know, David and Tim and Rebecca have been very proactive representing the city to get the developers all on the same page. Oh, and I'm sorry, and Brian Vincent too. I'm sorry.
Do we have any information that this is more, I guess, for David and planning staff, information as to what points in the day that intersection and the intersection at LaHaye and Centera get jammed? And I don't drive there that frequently, but it would be helpful to know if we already have traffic jams.
This is David Brooks. I know that the Department of Transportation is concerned about that intersection. They have expressed concern about the relative closeness of these two intersections, the LaHaye and Mount Support and the LaHaye Route 120 intersection. The hospital. So to answer your question again, that's the traffic studies look at peak hour travel. The peak hour in this area is in the 7 to 9 o'clock range. So if anybody drives that corridor between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., you probably see that there is traffic. There's a fair amount of traffic coming up that hill. So I know that the Department of Transportation, watches this corridor quite closely. They have requested some improvements at the 120 LaHaye intersection as part of the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center project that was approved earlier this year, that would add the adaptive signal technology that already exists down closer to the interchange. That technology will be added to the Route 120 LaHaye intersection, which will make this, again, that system works by, and it actually uses cameras on the mast arms to watch traffic and basically learn from itself and adapt in more or less real time to give additional green time, so that if cars are queuing up, it'll have the capability of giving more green time. If they're not queuing up for some reason, then it'll give less screen time potentially. So DOT has expressed concern that as we make improvements to the 120 LaHaye intersection, we need to make sure that this signal at Mount Support and LaHaye gets coordinated with the 120, because you don't want to send more cars through that northbound left on 120 and then just have them hit a red light at LaHaye and mount support. So there's definitely traffic in the area. Ordinarily in the past, for projects of this scale, or really any scale, when the traffic study shows that something is breaking, so to speak, then the planning board has said, okay, your traffic study says this intersection is being degraded substantially and recommending, some improvement. That's the improvement that gets required of that project. In this case, the traffic study that we have for Dartmouth Hitchcock and then for Dartmouth College Michael's application and now for Saxon doesn't yet show that any particular intersection is being degraded to the point that a physical improvement is needed to fix it. So again, we don't have the fourth of the series of traffic studies yet, but in lieu of having a physical improvement to make to any one of these intersections, staff began the conversations that Mr. Plord referenced a moment ago to try to coordinate with these four applicants to get them to sort of contribute to an appropriate scale improvement that was larger perhaps than any one of them would be expected to take on by themselves, but could all be achieved as a complete project if we sort of pool the resources. So that's what we've been working on. We met as recently as last Thursday through a conference call. And I think we agree that it's going to take a little bit more time to figure out all of the details. But again, all of the applicants, all of the parties involved so far continue to be on board with the concept. And so that is what will be reflected in the condition of approval when you get to that point.
I appreciate that. I'm just looking at the map and I'm thinking Alteria is 120 apartments that is going to be targeting nurses and other hospital staff. The apartment block that's further down 120 looks, the last time I drove by it, like it's coming to completion. I don't know what sort of clientele they'll have. And then we've got Mount Support, and my mind see cars going up 120 to that first turn, and then there's not a huge amount of space between that first traffic light and the second traffic light. And God forbid we get in the situation where people, even though they have a green light on 120, can't turn because that little road, short distance is already jammed with cars that are waiting for the light at LaHaye and Mount Support to turn in their favor.
Chair, this is Kathy. I think we need to keep in mind too that ambulances need to travel this way. And so it's critical that there not be any traffic backups on this road.
That's a great point. Great point. Other board members?
I have a couple of questions, Chair.
Yes, Joan.
This is Joan, and looking at the letters from Hanover and from the Upper Valley Regional Planning Commission, and they are mentioning Hanover's concern about sending this additional traffic into Hanover for parking. Where will they put the cars? And so also, I'm just suggesting that we as a board look again at their comments. I don't feel we've heard during this discussion much that refers to what their comments have been.
Joan, you may have dropped off the call at one point, but I did raise the Hanover letter. earlier in the discussion. But I
Okay.
appreciate that's something to keep in mind.
Well, I'm thinking about the letter that's from our Conservation Commission, and then the Hanover letter, the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee, and talking about definitely having EV charging stations now, definitely pursuing bike rentals on the property, and like I said, the impact on additional cars into Hanover, and also having solar panel installations. Just saying, not to forget these. They're in our packet that has the traffic analysis and the fiscal analysis in it.
Excuse me, if I may, this is Christina from the applicant. Ms. Monroe, we actually provided written comments to the Planning Commission's inquiry, and we did review a number of these items in our last presentation. Just to quickly summarize, we do have EV-ready parking, and we also have solar-ready roofs. Currently discussing with solar vendors about putting panels on the roofs of each building.
Yes, I thank you. I did see that in here, and some of the things looked like we're working on that, or we think that will be, and so I guess I was trying to nudge it more into the definitely will be.
Okay, I just wanted to note that we did respond to those. We did not respond.
Well, I'm thinking of our board as
Got it.
well, you know,
Okay.
that we hadn't necessarily talked about. We had not talked about it.
Point well taken. So we have 15 minutes and change. What I'd like to suggest, unless board members disagree, is ask Tim to do a 10-minute overview of issues he thinks we should have in mind when reading his long memo. And then we need to have a few minutes to discuss a special meeting, because I do not see us getting through the next discussion alongside other applications on May 11th. So Tim, could you do just a very, I know it's hard, but a quick overview of maybe the new waivers that have come in?
Yeah.
What do you think board members in particular need to focus on?
Yeah, I don't think I think it'll just take a minute or two, actually.
Okay, great.
I just want to point out some of there's just 2 or 3 larger issues that we'd ask the planning board to think about between now and the next meeting. Aspects of this have already been raised and discussed. The first would be the open space requirements in the subdivision regulations require a 15%. Require that 15% of the property be reserved for open space, and requires that open space to be conserved in certain ways. The requirements in section 202 are a little bit more extensive than some of the other regulations we see in the subdivision regulations, and lend themselves to arguably to some interpretation, and those interpretational issues are what staff and the applicant continue to work on, and hopefully we can come to a resolution by the next meeting. But I think that the clear issue for the board to think about is whether they are interested or open to waiving, and I'm going to use that word loosely because there's some arguably some confusing language in section 12.2 about whether a waiver is required or not, but from a technical standpoint, but the board is going to have to make a decision as to whether or not the amount of open space that's been offered, which is less than 15% of the total space of the lot itself, the 50-acre lot itself, or if they are comfortable with looking at the site as a kind of dividing in half, if you will, between the front half of the property that is being developed currently and the back half of the lot, which is for now proposed to remain undisturbed. And so if the board looks at the front half of the property that's being developed, then in that sense, the open space that's being provided does meet or exceed that 15% requirement, but again, it does not do so in the context of the entire lot. And so that's something that the board needs to think about and whether they are comfortable with in terms of the exact form of the relief that will be given, whether it's a waiver or something else. We can talk about that at the next meeting. That's not really what's important. What's important is whether the board is willing to allow them to provide, the applicant to provide less than 15% open space or not. David brought you up to speed on where we are with the conversation we've been having with the other applicants in the area to talk about off-site improvements to accommodate the increase in traffic and the expected pedestrian needs of the residents of this corridor. Staff is concerned about the number of parking spaces being proposed. The applicant is authorized under the code to provide up to 120% of the minimum required parking spaces. In this case, they are providing up to 125% and asking for a conditional use permit for that extra 5%, which is about 20 plus spaces. Staff would ask you to please take a careful look at those conditional use permit criteria. We have included those, copied and pasted those into the staff memo for quick reference. You'll find those on page 10 of the present staff memo. So please take a look at those criteria and see, and as well as the applicant's letter in support of that request to see if the criteria are met. Again, it would be nice if there could be some sort of structured parking used, or just less parking spaces provided overall. But you've heard what the applicant has to say about that, and so that's something that we can talk about going forward. But both staff and the Conservation Commission are concerned about the large amount of surface parking that's proposed for the lot. We will continue to work with the applicants, see if there are any other options somewhat related to that, or perhaps it stands on its own. Staff is concerned about the proposed landscaping for the front of the lot. It's not. It doesn't it doesn't currently meet the requirements of section 6.2 for perimeter landscaping, at least along the front, and for the amount of trees that are required along the frontage. And so rather than have the applicant submit a waiver for that, we'd like to see the landscaping along the front of the property, maybe substantially revised is a little strong, but definitely revised, both along the edge of the parking lot that is closest to the front lot line, and along the edge of the road where there's a substantial amount of existing vegetation that's proposed to remain to some extent, but it's rather unsightly, and so we'd like to see some more. We'd like to see the applicant be a little bit more specific about exactly what it is that they're going to propose to keep from the existing brush area along the front of the road, and again to provide some further landscaping at the top of the proposed embankment where the parking lot will be. The reason I said that it's somewhat related to the parking question is because
I can't hear Tim anymore.
Tim, I think we lost you.
In between the front lot. Oh,
Tim, we lost you. You got to back up.
Okay. Yep. There is a row of parking spaces that are proposed to be located in between the access drive at the front of the property and the front of the property. And we'd like to work with the applicant to see if those parking spaces can be removed, ideally removed altogether, but at least partially relocated somewhere else on site. There are some aesthetic concerns with what we're trying to create along Mount Support Road, and what you have now substantially is you're going to be looking at a parking lot, and so we think that between on both the north and south ends of the property, that's going to be the predominant feature, and so we think that by eliminating that row of parking spaces that runs along the length of the frontage, in front, again, between the access drive and the front property lot line, that to eliminate those or move them somewhere else somehow, and replace that with a nice landscaping area would go a really long way to creating a more aesthetically pleasing development. There are also some concerns about the head-in parking there and light shining into potential development across the street. That is a concern that should be given some consideration. So I'd ask the board to please look at that, look at the landscaping, look at those parking spaces, see if you see what you think, see if that's something if that's a concern that you share along with staff. And then let me see. Just a quick note on, this is more actually to the applicant. The city engineer did have a few outstanding comments, which I neglected to send to you earlier. So I will do that, and those may be something that the applicant can address actually in between now and the next meeting. So I'll send
Tim,
those along.
Those are pretty straightforward.
Oh, you did? I did send those? Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And then I guess the only other thing I wanted to mention for tonight is just to help orient everyone with the process. When we get to the point of making some decisions, you'll close the hearing whenever that happens, and then there are going to be several decisions that you'll have to make. And the first would be to determine whether the development is scattered and premature, and that's a requirement of section 10.3c of the subdivision regulations. And scattered and premature, of course, is related to that fiscal impact study, which was discussed earlier, and which the applicant will discuss in more detail at the next meeting. So that's decision or determination number one, whether the development is scattered and premature. And then you'll have to go through the requested waivers from the subdivision regulations. Then the requested waivers from the site plan regulations. Then you'll have to make a decision on the requested conditional use permit to allow excess parking. And then finally, you'd be in a position at that point to make a determination on the actual application itself, the request for major subdivision and review approval and site plan approval. So I also apologize profusely for the late providing the staff memo to you so late, but please take a look at it. Let staff know in the meantime if you have any questions about it, and we'll go into more detail at the next meeting.
Well, we've been at this for the better part of 2 hours. I think it was a very, very useful discussion, but it does illustrate the amount of time that we're going to need, which leads me to the conclusion that we need a special meeting. So, David, hopefully you've been looking at your calendar.
Yes, I have. How, I don't think there's a whole lot more. I think there is some more back and forth between staff and the applicant for some of these what has been discussed tonight or talked about. So there may be a need for a little bit more time for that. So looking out, I'm tentatively looking out past May 11th at the moment, rather than to May 11th.
Right.
The board's regular meeting is on May 11th. There are meetings on the 12th. Let's see. Actually, that's the 12th is a possibility. That's a Tuesday night. It's not one of your regular meeting nights, but There's a board of cemetery trustees, but that's the only thing happening that night.
I just think 2 nights in a row is
too much.
Is too much. People aren't going to come focused, I'm afraid. It'll be a fatigue.
Okay. The Monday, May 18th and Tuesday, May 19th, there's nothing currently in the calendar. However, just like the planning board, the zoning board has been holding its hearings at its regular meeting of the month, which would be May 4th, and then scheduling a follow-up meeting to decide that application on the third Monday, which would be the 18th. Tim, what are your thoughts? Sorry to put you on the spot here.
No, I mean, it's that meeting hasn't been established, and I believe it will be a very light agenda. And so that meeting doesn't necessarily have to be scheduled on the 18th. I mean, I suppose if the planning board grabs that date first, then they're first in line, and the zoning board can come up with an alternate date.
All right, we're running out of time, and I'm trying to avoid an extension. So could I have a motion from someone to continue this meeting until May 18th at 6:30?
Chair, can I just ask a question first? This is Kathy. Sure. I noticed somewhere in the document some comment about removing riprap along the front of the development, and I was just assuming that was there for a purpose. And so, if not tonight, next time, maybe staff or applicant or somebody could mention why that was suggested. And then, Tim, several months ago, you had asked me for documentation on pervious pavement, and I sent you that information. And because of the concern of the large size of the parking lots, someone asked a question a few minutes ago, well, what else could be done other than covered parking? And maybe the pervious parking pavement would be a solution here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, we're running out of time, so now I need a motion to extend the meeting 10 minutes.
Councilor Winnie so moves.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Monroe seconds.
Thank you. I'm just going to do a quick roll call. I'm in favor. Jim?
Councilor Jim Winnie is in favor.
Joan?
In favor, yes.
Laurel? Is Laurel still there?
In favor.
You're in favor. Thank you, Laurel. Kathy?
Kathy votes yes.
And Sarah?
Sarah votes yes.
All right, thank you. So we got 10 minutes. I'll go back. Kathy, we heard your points. Thank you for that. Go back. Can I have a motion to continue this meeting until May 18th at 6:30? Are people agreeable to that, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
I have a question, Chair.
Please, Joan. Yep.
I'm a little bit hesitant to quote take over the night that the ZBA usually has, as I would be kind of annoyed if somebody else took over our slot of, the second and fourth Mondays. So I was wondering if we should just aim it for Tuesday, the 19th. And then that way there's no conflict.
I'm certainly indifferent. Does anybody else have?
I can't make the 19th. I'm tied up that day. Sarah, I won't be present.
How about if we started it a little bit later? What time does the zoning board meeting start?
Joan, this is Tim. I appreciate that thought. The zoning board only regularly meets the first Monday of the month.
Okay.
So this is not, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think you'd be stepping on anyone's toes.
Okay, good. I didn't realize that. I just assumed they met twice.
Yep.
Those lucky guys.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready to vote.
All right, so we're back to May 18th. So
This is Kathy, so moved.
so moved. Thank you, Kathy. Joan,
Second,
will you
Sarah.
second for me? Sarah, you second?
Yes.
All right, so I will do a roll call. I am in favor. Jim,
Counselor Jim Winnie's in favor.
Joan,
Joan is in favor.
Laurel,
Laurel is in favor.
Kathy,
Kathy votes yes.
and Sarah.
Sarah votes yes.
All right, thank you all. So we're continuing this until Monday, the 18th. We now have 2 board members who can rejoin us. And Matt, you can, if you like, throw in your motion.
I'm not sure if Matt's still with us.
Oh, we lost him? All right, can I have a motion to adjourn then?
So moved. Monroe.
Joan, thank you. A second?
Laurel.
Thank you, Laurel. So I will do a roll call for adjournment. So I'm in favor. Gregorio? We may have lost.
Gregorio,
Jim? We couldn't hear you, Gregorio.
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Jim?
Counselor Jim Winnie's in favor.
Laurel?
In favor.
Kathy?
Kathy votes yes.
Matt Hall is not with us. And
Monroe
Sarah?
votes- Monroe, oh, sorry.
Oh, I missed Joan. I'm sorry. Joan, I missed you.
Monroe votes yes.
And Sarah.
Sarah votes yes.
And we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
You've done very well.
Thank
Nice
you.
job. Adios.
And,
Bye.
and we're getting mailed that addenda, that staff letter.
Yes.
Yes.
It'll go out.
Thank you.